This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices fell in Asian trade on Monday, extending declines of more than 4% last week as investors awaited the outcome of talks between the US and Russia later this week on the war in Ukraine. Brent crude futures fell 62 cents, or 0.93%, to $65.97 a barrel by 0631 GMT, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were down 69 cents, or 1.08%, to $63.19. Expectations have risen for a potential end to sanctions that have limited the supply of Russian oil to international markets, after U.S. President Donald Trump said on Friday that he would meet Russian President Vladimir Putin on August 15 in Alaska to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine.
Saudi Arabia's crude oil exports to China are set to fall in September, slipping from a more than two-year high in August after the world's largest exporter raised prices, several trade sources said on Monday. State oil firm Saudi Aramco will ship about 43 million barrels to China in September, or 1.43 million barrels per day, BPD, a tally of allocations to Chinese refiners showed. That is down from 1.65 million barrels of oil per day allocated in August. Companies which plan to reduce Saudi crude liftings in September include Asia's top refiner Sinopec and its Fujian refinery joint venture with Saudi Aramco, the sources said.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Indonesia reaffirmed a plan to raise the mandatory palm oil content in its biodiesel to 50% starting from next year, but the program known as B50 is unlikely to start in January, Senior Energy Ministry official Enia Listiani Dewey told reporters on Monday. Indonesia currently implements a mandatory bio content of 40%, B40, and is working to increase the amount of palm oil in the blend in a bid to reduce its reliance on imported fossil fuels. The government will carry out a number of tests for the new 50% blend, which may take up to 8 months, Enia said.
Norway's energy minister said on Friday he is preparing to launch a new oil and gas licensing round on the Norwegian continental shelf, the first offer of new drilling permits in unexplored frontier regions since 2021. Norway will be a long-term supplier of oil and gas to Europe, while the Norwegian continental shelf will continue to create value and jobs for our country, Minister of Energy Tarjei Asland of the Labour Party said in a statement. The government in 2021 agreed to a 4-year moratorium on frontier exploration, limiting the awards of new acreage to areas near existing fields in return for backing in Parliament of a smaller left-wing party. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. The Indian Alloy Steel Producers Association has filed an anti-dumping petition with the Federal Trade Ministry against cheap imports from China, its senior executive told Reuters on Monday. India, the world's second biggest producer of crude steel, has the capacity to make around 18 million to 20 million metric tons per annum of alloy steel, which is used in the auto, defense and aerospace sectors. China is selling wire rods of alloy steel at very low prices, and imports have gone up considerably in the last 3 years, hurting the local alloy steel producers, said Anil Dewan, Director General, Alloy Steel Producers Association of India.
Gold prices slipped 1% on Monday as market participants focused on the upcoming US-Russia talks over the war in Ukraine, and July inflation data that could offer more insight into the US Federal Reserve's interest rate outlook. Spot gold was at $3,363.31 per ounce, as of 0703 GMT, after it hit its highest since July 23 on Friday. U.S. gold futures for December delivery dropped 2% to $3,423.10. Cooling geopolitical tensions surrounding the war in Ukraine saw gold fall further, following Friday's announcement that U.S. President Donald Trump will meet with Russia President Vladimir Putin on U.S. soil, Citi Index senior analyst Matt Simpson said.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday urged China to quadruple its soybean purchases ahead of a key tariff truce deadline, sending Chicago soybean prices higher, though analysts were quick to question the feasibility of any such deal. In a late-night post on Truth Social, Trump said China was worried about a shortage of soybeans and he hoped it would quickly quadruple its soybean orders from the U.S. Rapid service will be provided. Thank you, President 11, Trump said in his post. The most active soybean contract on the Chicago Board of Trade jumped 2.38% to $10.11 a bushel at 0637 g.m.t. on Monday after Trump's post. The contract was steady earlier.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.